Okay, good morning. We're starting a new unit today. We are back in number sense. So we have done already this year 54 lessons in number sense. So this is lesson 55, so it sort of picks up where some of the other stuff left off, but as we move on, you'll see that things keep coming together. So different things we've learned along the way keep popping up, and they help us learn new things. Okay, so we're back to fractions and decimals. The first one is a review, so I'm just going to sort of remind you of some of the things we've done in the past. Okay, so when you have a number like 1, 2, 3, decimal, 4, 5, 6, right? After the decimal, the first number you come to is the tenths. Because remember when we draw the, like this is hundreds, I'm not going to draw 100 lines, but you know what I mean, right? The boxes, and it has 100 boxes. And each stick in the box is a tenth. That's a tenth. So 4 of those would mean I would color in 4 sticks, right? The second column are the hundredths, remember? So to color in 100th, I'd only color in one little box. Now, if I had 45 hundredths, I'd color in 4 sticks plus 5 boxes. So it'd be something like that, right? If you see the pattern, 1 0, 2 zeros, the next one is going to be thousandths, which means that if I had a box that had 1,000 in it, I'd only have one tiny little corner up here. There'd be 1,000 blank ones in one of those, okay? So tenths, hundredths, thousandths, ones, tens, hundredths, right? You know those ones, easy breezy. These are the ones we've been working on this year. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Now, if I asked you to show me what 6/10 looks like, right? You would draw 6 of those sticks. Right? Now, 6/10 means if I change it to a decimal, that I need to have 6 in the tenths column. So if I'm making 6/10 into a decimal, I'd have nothing in the ones, 0, and 6 in the tenths column, 6/10. Okay? If I asked you to show me 8 hundredths, right? If it was in a box, one of the 100 squares, you'd color in like 8 of them, right? Or you could draw like the 8 little boxes, if you like. And to change it to a fraction, or a decimal, I need 8 in the hundredths column. So I'm going to have nothing in the ones, nothing in the tenths, and 8 in the hundredths. 8 hundredths. Now, if I said 18 hundredths, you would color in a whole stick, because I have 1/10, and 8 hundredths, right? To write it as a decimal, I'm going to need 1 in the tenths column and 8 in the hundredths column. So 18 hundredths, and the way you can think of it is that whatever column the last number is in, that's what your denominator is going to be. So because there's an 8 in the hundredths column, we know that the bottom number is going to be 100. How many do we have? 18. Okay? So let's have a look at number 1. Oh, you're also going to have to think about reducing fractions, like looking for common factors. So that's looking for a number that goes into the top and the bottom, right? But we'll get to that in a second. Okay, number 1, match the fractions and decimals. So we have 4 tenths, 4 thousandths, 44 hundredths, 4 hundredths, and 44 thousandths. And you need to match them to A, B, C, or D, okay? So 4/10. How do I write 4/10? Well, I know I'm going to have a 4 in the tenths column, so it's going to be nothing in the ones and a 4 in the tenths column. So you need to find where this number is on the second row, and then put an A beside it. 4/10, A. This one, 4 thousandths. Well, now I know I need a 4 in the thousandths column. So I'm going to have nothing in the ones, nothing in the tenths, nothing in the hundredths, and 4 in the thousandths. So you're going to find this number and make it B. Okay, this was A. 44 hundredths. So I know that I have to end in the hundredths column. So this 4 is going to end up in the hundredths column. So I have nothing in the ones, and I know I have this 4, it has to end in the hundredths, tenths, hundredths, so that means the first 4 goes in the tenths column, and that makes sense. 44 hundredths, if I was going to color it in on a box, I would have 4 full sticks colored in and 4 little boxes, right? So I'd have 4/10 and 4 hundredths. So this one, 44 hundredths, you're going to find decimal 44, and that's going to be C, okay? This one, 4 100ths. So I know I'm going to have nothing in the ones, nothing in the tenths, and 4 in the hundredths. So decimal 04 is 4 hundredths. So find that one. This one is D. 44 thousandths means that my last number has to be in the thousandths column. So I'm going to have 0, decimal, and I know I've got to have 44. So this has to be the thousandths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, which means I have to add a 0 in there to make sure that that 4 is in the thousandths column. Okay? 44 thousandths. You're going to find that one, 0.044, and that is E. Okay? Number 1 done. You're going to love today's math. 1 done page. Okay. A decimal fraction has a power of 10. Could be 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million, anything that ends in, has a 1 and a bunch of zeros or 1 0. Write the fraction as an equivalent decimal fraction and as a decimal. So if we can get to something that has a denominator of 10, 100,000, anything like that, we can easily change it to a decimal. So that's what we're going to do. So they start out with a half. Well, how can I get 2 to something like 10, 100, or 1,000? Well, I can get 2 to 10 easily. I can go times 5, times 5, 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 5 is 10. So I can get 5/10. I can change this to a fraction, or to a decimal, very easily, right? 5/10, I need a 5 in the tenths column. That's 5/10. Okay? Second one, they've got a fifth. How do I get 5 to 10, 100, 1,000, anything like that? I can get it to 10 easily, right? 5 times what gives me 10? How many 5s make 10? 2. I do it to the top and the bottom, I get 2/10. I can easily make 2/10 into a decimal. You do it by yourself. Okay? C is a quarter. Okay, this one's a little trickier. I can't get 4 to 10. Can I get 4 to 100? Absolutely. Think about it as money. What coin, when you use 4 of them, makes 100 cents, a dollar? A quarter, right? Funny, that's why it's called a quarter, because it's a $quarter. How much is a quarter worth? 25 cents. So if I times both by 25, I can get to 100. 1 times 25 is 25. 4 times 25 is 100. I have 25 hundredths. I can change that to a decimal. Super easy. I know that my last number has to be in the hundredths column. So I have no ones and 25 hundredths. My 5 is in the tenths, hundredths column. So decimal 25 is a quarter. Okay? I'm going to do one more with you and leave you to do the rest, okay? So, 3/4 as a decimal. So, again, I know I can get 4 to 100 by times it by 25. So I times both by 25. 3 times 25, 25, 50, 75, over 100, 75 hundredths. I can change that to a decimal, lickety split, decimal 75. My 5 is in the hundredths column, tenths, hundredths. Okay? You guys finish the last 2 by yourself, pause the video, come back for number 3. Okay, equivalent fractions. Remember, equivalent fractions, we have done something like a half, I times them both by 2, and I get 2/4, I times them both by 3, I get 3/6, I times them both by 4, and I get 4/8, right? Those are all equivalent fractions. We're going to do that again, but this time, I'm going to make it even easier for you, okay? Write 3 different fractions that are equivalent to the decimal. So they've got decimal 5. Well, 3 different fractions. So what is this as a fraction? The first thing you think when you come to it. Well, I've got 5 in the tenths column, so I have 5 tenths, right? But what if instead of going to say 20 or 30, what if we just add a 0? So we'd have 5 tenths equals 50 hundredths. Look, I just added a 0 to both. I'm going to do it again. 500 thousandths. I added another 0 to each. That's a super easy way to make an equivalent fraction. And since we're working on powers of 10, that's what I'd like you to do. Okay? So we've got decimal 2. What would that be as a fraction? Well, I have 2 in the tenths column, so I have 2 tenths, which is 20 hundredths, which is 200 thousandths. Just add a 0 each time, top and bottom. Now, it would not be wrong if you said to me 2 tenths is 4 20ths, is 6 30ths. That's not wrong. It's just, I want you to practice using the powers of 10. Okay? Pause the video, finish the last part of number 3 by yourself. Number 4, write the decimal as a fraction in lowest terms. Now, remember, lowest terms means that both the top and bottom number, you cannot find a number that goes into both of them. So let's say 12/18, okay? That is not in lowest terms because I can find a number that goes into both 12 and 18. Let's start with 2. So if I go 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. That's still not lowest terms. I know a number that goes into 6 and goes into 9, and it's 3. So I'm going to divide that by 3 and that by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 2/3, there is no number other than 1 that goes into 2/3. This is lowest terms. You have to make sure there's no number that goes into both of them. Now, I showed you, I did this in 2 steps. You could have done it in 1. The biggest number that goes into 12 and 18 is 6. So if I had 12/18 and I divided them both by 6, I'd have 2/3. However, is this more right than that? No. If it helps you to keep the numbers simple and keep just taking little bites to get to the end, that's what you should do. If you know it in 1 step, that's what you should do. It's no more right to do it one way or the other. You do what makes sense to you, okay? Okay, so fraction in lowest terms. We have decimal 3/5. Well, the first thing we have to do is change that into a fraction. So my 5 is in the hundredths column, tenths, hundredths. So I know my number is going to be 100. How many do I have? 35. Okay, I need a number that goes into 35 and 100. Well, I automatically, when I see a 5 and a 0, I know I'm going to start with 5. So 35 divided by 5. How many 5s make 35? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. 7. 100 divided by 5, I know that 5 goes into 100 20 times. Now, is there any number that goes into 7 and 20? No, 7 does not go into 20, and nothing goes into 7. So this is lowest terms, okay? I'll do the second one with you, 0.25. I know the 5 is in the hundredths, so I'm over 100. How many do I have? 25. Okay, what's the biggest number that goes into 25? We could do it this way again and go by 5 if you like that, because I see 5 and 0. So 25 divided by 5 is 5, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. However, 5 goes into 20, so we have to take another bite at it. So we're going to divide by 5 on both of them. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So this is lowest terms, 1/4. Okay? This is another instance where your minute math is like the most valuable thing you could know, because it just comes to you like this. When I say, how many times does 5 go into 20, and you know it's 4, it makes things a lot quicker than having to stop and figure that out every time. So it is important that you practice your minute math. We don't want to lose that. Okay? Pause the video, go do question 4. Okay, question 5. Describe the patterns in the numerator and in the denominator of the equivalent fractions. And they've got 1/5, 2/10, 3/15, 4/20, 5/25, 6/30, right? Well, how did I get from 5 to 10? Times 2. How did I get from 5 to 15? Times 3. Times 4, times 5, times 6. And the same happens here, right? So those are your patterns. That's all you have to write. You do the second one by yourself. Figure out how did you get from the first to the second, and then go back to the first and go to the third, then back to the first, then to the fourth. Don't try to go from this to this to this to this to this. That's too hard. 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 6. Okay? What decimal do the equivalent fractions equal? Okay, so 1/5. What decimal is 1/5? Well, we know that 1/5 is 2/10. It says it right on the page. I can change that to a decimal super easy. Nothing in the ones, 2 in the tenths. Okay, you do the same thing in the second one. Go find where you can find a number that it will, you can make it into 100, right? So you can take that 3/4 that it starts out as and get it to 100. Times them both by 25, right? You're going to get a new fraction and then make that into the decimal, okay? Pause the video, go do part B. Okay, 6A. Circle the fractions in which the numerator and denominator have at least one common factor. So the first one in the line is 3/5. Is there a number that goes into 3 and goes into 5? Does 3 go into 5? No. Is there a number that goes into both? No. So you don't circle 3/5. 2/10. Is there a number that goes into 2 and into 10? Yes. 2 goes into itself and 2 goes into 10. So if I divide by 2, I end up with 1/5. So this one I would circle because they have a common factor. Okay? We'll do one more. 3/10. Is there a number that goes into 3 and goes into 10? Well, nothing goes into 3 except for 3 in itself. So does 3 go into 10? No. So they do not have a common factor, so I don't circle that one. Okay? You're going to go through the rest, see if there's numbers that go into the top and the bottom. If there is, you circle it. If there isn't, put an X through it or leave it blank. Your choice. Okay? Pause the video, go do number 6A. Nope. Oh yeah, 6A, sorry. Okay, 6B. Which fractions in part A can be written in lowest terms? So what I said is all of the circled fractions. You can divide the common factor into both the numerator and the denominator. Okay? So there you go, I answered B for you. Use your explanation in part B. Circle the decimals that can be written as a fraction with a denominator smaller than 100. Okay, so the example they give you is 0.16. And to make this into a fraction, tenths, hundredths, so I'm making it into a decimal. No, a fraction, duh. Okay, so my 6 is in the hundredths, so I know I have 100 as a bottom number, and I have 16 of them. Can I reduce 16 out of 100? Absolutely. They're both even numbers, which means, if nothing else, 2 goes into it. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So I have 8/50ths. I can make that decimal into a fraction with a denominator smaller than 100. Now, in the example, they went with 4, so I would divide this by 2 again, and I end up with 4/25. However, it doesn't say express it in lowest terms. It just says, can you get it to a fraction with a denominator less than 100? So this would have been right. This is not more right because that's not what they asked. They didn't ask for it in lowest terms. Okay, 0.33. Actually, we'll do the first one. 1, 2. I know that the 2 is in the hundredths, so my hundredths are on the bottom, and I have 12 of them. Is there a number that goes into 12 and 100? Yep, 2 goes into it, which would give me 6 on the top and 50 on the bottom. Now, I could reduce this further. If you like to practice, go for it. It's not necessary. I have a fraction less than 100. Okay? So decimal 1, 2 worked. The next one is decimal 3, 3. Okay? 3 is in the hundredths, so I know I have 100 on the bottom, and I have 33 of them. Okay? Is there a number that goes into 33 and 100? Well, 33 does not go into 100. I know that 3 goes into 33, but 3 does not go into 100. I know that 11 goes into 33, but 11 does not go into 100. So this cannot be made into a fraction less than a denominator of 100. So you either X it out or circle it, okay? Or X it out or leave it alone. Because you cannot write it as less than 100. Okay, do the next one with you, 0.24. My 4 is in the hundredths, so I have 100 on the bottom, and I have 24 of them. Is there a number that goes into 24 and 100? Yep, 2 goes into both of them. 24 cut in half is 12. 100 cut in half is 50. I have a denominator less than 100, so I will circle this one. That one works. Okay, you're going to go finish the rest. Pause the video. Last question. Would you use a fraction or a decimal in each case? This was an interesting question because lots of times it's not that you can't do it both ways. It's just what do we commonly do in our daily lives, right? So they're saying, do you say a quarter hour or decimal 25 hours? In my life, I have never heard anybody say decimal 25 hours. However, I've heard quarter to 2 a million times, or quarter after 5, right? So we use, for time, we use fractions. We don't use decimals. Like, you would never say, I'll see you in decimal 5 hours. Like, you'd think somebody was crazy if they said that to you, right? You say, I see you in a half hour. So, for time, we use a quarter hour. Then we've got decimal 25 meters, or a quarter meter. Now, if you were running long jump and you jumped, would you say, I jumped a quarter meter? No, because we use a measuring tape, and on a measuring tape there are no fractions. It's all like number measurements, right? So in measuring distance, we use decimals, not fractions. C, 1/8 of a kilogram, or 0.125 kilograms. Okay? Have you ever gone to the store and bought 1/8 of a kilogram of flour? No, because when you use a scale, they don't use fractions. They use decimals. So this is what you would use. You would not use this. And again, this all is 1/8 of a kilogram decimal 125? 100% it is. So it's not wrong to say 1/8 of a kilogram, but it would be very confusing to people because then they would have to convert 1/8 of a kilogram to weight to a decimal to know how much you actually meant, because you can't put it on a scale and look for the 1/8. We don't have that. Okay? So that's that one. And D, 3/4 cup. You guys had better get this one right off the hop, or 0.75 cup. You've done enough cooking with me to know, have you ever seen 0.75 cup? Have you ever seen a measuring cup that has 0.75 on it? No, it's 3/4 of a cup. Why? I don't know. That's just the way that our society has decided that we are going to label our recipes and our measuring cups. You will find, if as you hopefully get more into cooking, that when you use international recipes, often they use weights, especially with baking. There's often weight attached to it because it's more accurate than, like, if I'm measuring flour, I should tap the cup to make sure it's right, I should level the top, and you know, you're looking at a measure of volume for that as opposed to weight. Weight is the same everywhere, right? If your scale is accurate, 0.75, but it would never be in cups. It would be like 0.75 grams or whatever, right? So when you measure volume, you're using fractions. Okay, that's it for today. I will talk to you guys later. Have a fun day.